As many of you may know, I am a huge fan of Dungeons and Lasers. I spent a ton of money on their first Kickstarter, and since then I've been using their terrain for all kinds of projects, from dioramas to terrain builds to the basis of all of the terrain for my Curse of Strahd campaign. So, when they reached out to me and asked if I would like to do a video where I give my impressions of their latest and greatest products for their new crowdfunding campaign, Dungeons and Lasers Caves, link down in the description, of course I said yes. So let's open up this package and see just what they've sent me. We got some sprues of their new pre-painted terrain tiles, a gelatinous cube miniature, a single hand-painted element, I guess, to compare to the pre-painted ones, as well as a few of their new cave sprues, which I am quite excited to start painting. Stay tuned to the end of the video if you want to see exactly how I end up painting these. But before we delve into the caves, I want to talk about these pre-painted sprues, as this is something I don't think I've ever seen before. I've seen pre-painted miniatures, I've seen pre-painted terrain, but I've never seen sprues like this that have this level of detailed pre-painted elements on the sprue itself. After taking a look at their website, it seems like this is some sort of magical process involving 3D scanning of actual paint jobs, and then somehow replicating that paint job using UV paint on the actual production sprues. I'm not entirely sure how this works, but the results are certainly quite interesting. They sent me 2 full sets of these pre-painted tiles. One is the Dwarven Mine kit that I painted recently for Curse of Strahd, and the other is the Pathfinder Abomination Vault set that I have to admit I have been eyeing for quite a while now, so thank you for sending me this. I'll definitely make use of it. When you buy these sets at retail, it's just 6 of the same sprue. Each sprue is identical because they're modular. You want multiples of everything, makes sense. But in this one, I noticed there's actually some variety in the sprues. Not in terms of the sculpts, but in terms of the paint jobs. Some of the Abomination Vaults have blood splatter or OSL elements, for example. And in the mines, some of the tiles have pools of water or pools of mud. Overall, I'm quite impressed with the quality of these, given that they have been pre-painted by a machine somehow, but the real test will be seeing how these look when they get assembled. I assembled the Abomination Vaults first, and they went together pretty quickly. You just clip them off the sprue as you would any miniature and remove the excess with a knife. And it seems like they've thought of everything here, as if you notice, they've actually matched the plastic color to the paint job. So even when you're scraping off the excess, it more or less matches the paint job and it isn't too noticeable. It's very clever. For those of you unfamiliar with the Dungeons and Lasers system, they all clip together using these plastic clips, and there's usually a hole left over where you can insert either a wall or a door, or fill with a peg. Some of the sprues actually come with these themed pegs, which I'm a big fan of. I want this on all of your sprues from now on, Dungeons and Lasers. This one has little rocks you can insert, for example. Many of the sets also come with doors with working hinges, and some of the walls have peg holes as well that you can use to insert accessories like these little torches. The whole system is basically like Lego, with all of the pegs and walls and floors being interchangeable with this one peg and clip system. This means that the more you collect, the more options you have for building things, and I'm really starting to feel this now that I have multiple of these sets painted and collected. But here's an example of a dungeon I was able to build using just the one Abomination Vault set, which is only 6 sprues. Pretty cool. And here is an example of a dungeon I built with just the Dwarven Mine set, which is also 6 sprues, similar formats. Also pretty cool. And overall, I think these kits look quite good, especially the Abomination Vaults I think look really good. Here's a comparison between the hand-painted element they sent me and the pre-painted one. I think both sets could benefit from a coat of matte varnish as they are quite glossy, and I'll probably go in and add some more paint touch-ups in some of the more detailed areas, especially with the torches and OSL effects. But given that these were painted not by a human but by a machine, I think the result is pretty impressive. I have to say, I've never seen anything quite like this before, and I'm really curious to see some of their other sets in the pre-painted versions. If you want a nice set of dungeon tiles and you aren't into the painting part of the hobby, I think this could be an interesting option for you. But speaking of interesting options, let's take a look at the brand new cave tiles, which I have to admit, I am pretty excited about. The new cave sets are the main feature of Dungeons & Lasers' current crowdfunding campaign, which has just launched over on GameFound. And let me tell you, they've got any flavor of cave you could possibly want. They've got vanilla caves, they've got spiky caves, fleshy caves, goblin hangout caves, creepy crawly caves, mining caves, pit fight caves, torture caves, ritual caves, toothy caves, yucky caves, and Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage caves. All of this is available in pre-painted or unpainted versions. You can also get the new pre-painted versions of a bunch of older kits. There's miniatures available, there's accessories available, there's RPG books, and it's all in a nice hard plastic, aside from the RPG books. Those are paper, I think. And it's all a nice hard plastic. No PVC, so you can carve this stuff, you can use your plastic glue with this stuff, and it's all from a company with a great reputation that not only produces all their plastic in-house, but they've also got a ton of crowdfunding campaigns already under their belt, completed, and delivered on time or ahead of schedule. So if you want any of this stuff, this is your best chance to get it, as it is a lot cheaper here than it will be from retail. But enough with the ad segment, let's assemble and paint us some caves. So along with everything else, I was sent these 3 different cave sprues. The basic floors conform to the standard Dungeons & Lasers square format, but there's also these triangular half tiles that allow for the creation of more organic, cave-like layouts. And not only this, but we actually get curved walls in this set. Unlike most Dungeons & Lasers elements, these do require plastic glue to put together, but once they are together, this really opens up the options of what you can create with these kits. This might not seem like a big deal to you, but as a longtime fan of Dungeons & Lasers, the main thing we have always been missing in these sets are curved walls and rounded elements. Up until now, the Dungeons & Lasers system has been great, but it's been mostly limited to square and rectangular buildings or structures. And the addition of these new curved and more organic shapes is really going to allow for way more options in all of our builds, I think. Unfortunately, they only sent me 3 cave sprues. This is not a full set, it's just a few walls and a few floors. The full set looks like it will come with some raised platforms as well. I'm excited to investigate those. And because they sent me more walls than floors, I decided to sub in some of the other Dungeons & Lasers floor pieces from my collection to build the biggest cave I could with these pieces. The end result is pretty cool, but you know what would look even cooler if we paint this stuff up. I started out by separating all of the tiles into individual pieces and priming them in Pro-Acryl Brown Black. Once this was done, I gave all of the tiles an overspray of Pro-Acryl Dark Gray Blue, spraying from the top on all of the wall pieces to give us some built-in shadows, and spraying from the side on all of the floor pieces to catch the details and give us some shadows on those as well. After this, I gave everything some highlights with Pro-Acryl Bright Ivory, once again spraying from above on the walls and from the sides on the tiles. And then in some of the places with really sharp, specific details, I gave them a dry brush with Army Painter Fanatic Matte White to help make those details really pop. I'm not entirely sure if this had much of an effect on the final paint job, but it only took about 10 minutes. For the first color in our gradient, I wanted to try out this new color, Viejo Game Color Fluorescent Cold Green, which is just a really thin, nice, bright cyan color. I sprayed this over the top of all of the tiles, varying up the intensity in places to give a nice mottled look. And then for the second color in our gradient, I went with Viejo Game Color Fluorescent Violet. I tried to spray this mostly from below on the walls to create some vibrant shadows, as well as around the perimeter of the tiles, as I wanted the floors to be more violet looking than the raised walls. And with this completed, I think we got a pretty cool looking vibrant cave system, but I think we can take this paint job just a little bit further, so let's break out some Noosh. Noosh is this new product from ProAcryl that's been marketed as a sort of alternative to oil wash, and here's how it works. You add your desired shade color to a little measuring cup. In this case, I'm using Shyish Purple from the contrast line. You then mix in 2 or 3 parts Noosh, depending on how long you want the drying time to be extended. More Noosh equals more drying time, I think, from what I understand. And then we just apply this to any parts on our caves where we want some nice, vibrant shadows. After about 1 or 2 minutes, you can then remove the excess using a dry makeup sponge. And you can see here, I've actually managed to accidentally rub off some of the base coat in a few places as well. This just means I probably should have sprayed this whole thing with a coat of varnish first, like you would for most oil washes, so my bad on this, but honestly, it's not too bad. It's only a few little spots. And I'll just cover these up later with highlights. You can also remove any parts that might have coffee staining or have dried faster than you would like with a damp brush or cotton swab. You can reactivate this stuff with water for, I think, about 10 minutes, it seems like, after it's been applied. And you can blend with it however you would like. This is pretty useful as it allows for a lot of blending and removing as much of the paint as you need to. So yeah, I think Noosh works pretty well as a substitute for an oil wash, but I think the color I chose in this situation robbed us of a little bit of the vibrant look that we originally had on the model. So let's add that back in by mixing up some Noosh and fluorescent pink. I took this mix and I added it into just a few points of interest on the caves. There's no real method to this. Just any places I thought could use some fluorescent pink, I added some fluorescent pink. In this case, I mostly removed any excess with a damp brush instead of makeup sponges, as I kind of wanted to use this more as a glaze rather than just a shade. Finally, I added in some rough scrambled on highlights with Army Painter Fanatic Rainforest. Are these highlights or bits of fluorescent moss? I'll leave that up to you to decide. But the main thing is, it looks cool. So with that, I think our caves are complete. What do you think of these? I'm pretty happy with these, and I'll definitely find a use for them in my D&D games in the future. But I think in the meantime, I might use them as a little backdrop in my display case for my night goblins. I hope you enjoyed this preview of Dungeons and Lasers Caves and my little painting tutorial for the caves. Once again, the link is down in the description if you would like to get some of these caves of your very own. And if you enjoyed watching me paint and craft with these tiles, I have some good news for you, as I have linked an entire playlist down in the description of my series, where I'm building out all of the maps and environments from the D&D module Curse of Strahd, using Dungeons and Lasers tiles as well as scratch-built elements. So that is it for today. Thank you to Dungeons and Lasers for sponsoring this video. Thank you to all of our patrons for sponsoring this channel. and I will see you in the next video.